Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast. TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
Sì, davvero, bentornato caro trapista a quello che molti chiamano episodio 26 del vero podcast di Advisor, TRAP, TRAP. Mi chiamo Lincoln e siami a me come sempre chi sono gli altri tre calaveri dell'Apocalisse. Andy Hart, Alan il narratore Smith e Carl della voce Ouija. Ora signori, abbiamo uno spettacolo pieno zeppo di assolutely nulla, che andiamo subito a disemballare con alcuni altri recensioni di high energy dal mio buon amico Andrew Hart.
Over to me for 3 reviews. The first review is from Thor 3768 entitled Complete Trap 5 stars. Always a great listen. Relevant, irreverent, topical and entertaining in equal measures. Next up is from Daniel Bloomfield entitled SJP 5 stars. I'm an SJP advisor who listens to your excellent podcast, and when I saw the meat and potatoes was about SJP, I was concerned. But it was so refreshing to hear from 4 IFAs at the top of their game with some honest discussion. Keep up the good work, Daniel B. Final larger review is from Stuart Knight of Miller Knight, a good friend of mine, a good friend of the show. Proper podcast, 5 stars. A proper podcast on proper financial planning. Hard to think of life before TRAP now. Loving the entertaining chemistry between all of you, with obviously Carl being the big star. Thanks for the many useful insights, some of which have directly helped clients over the last few months. Looking forward to the first live trap at Hum London this year. Not quite happening, but you know about that, listeners. Keep up the great output. Best CPD out there. Any chance of a certificate? Smiley face Stuart. Esta vida boba. Back to you, Chairman.
Okay, right, Nick, we have to explain to the dear listeners, bellissimo, bravo, what you were on about there at the beginning. What's happening to you, Lincoln?
I'm having a virtual meltdown. I'm having a breakdown. Yes, so I am stranded in lovely Sicily. There are worse places to be stranded than Sicily. The lovely Penelope and I spent 7 nights at Taormina, a beautiful resort on the eastern coast of the island. Sicily is the biggest island in the Mediterranean, and I'll come back to why that matters in a moment. And then on Monday, we got the taxi, €130 for a 45-minute schlep to Catania. Got to Catania Airport. We step out of the taxi. I noticed there's an 1.5 inches of ash on the curb. Unbeknownst to us, Etna had one of its eruptions in the night, thrown out God knows how many tons of ash and stuff, and it had fallen over Catania and over the airport. The flight was delayed by an hour. Then the EasyJet app goes into meltdown. It's now delayed by 8.5 hours, and then it's cancelled because Catania Airport is cancelled. No flights in, no flights out. The arrivals hall is absolutely teeming. People are streaming out onto the taxi rank. It's baking hot. I'm there in my sports jacket and slacks, dressed for Luton weather, stuck in Catania Airport. So we have to make a decision. What do? We have to book a next flight out. So Tuesday's flight is gone. Wednesday's flight is gone. Thursday, there are flights available, but we also have to think, well, crikey, where are we staying tonight? We need to book somewhere. So I'll quickly go onto booking.com. All the hotels say 1 room left, then 0 room left. They're updating in real time as everyone tries to book a bloody hotel room in Catania. Anyway, I book a hotel room in Catania. By the time I get back to the EasyJet app, the Thursday flight is gone. We're now on to Friday. So I booked Friday's flight out. Okay, this, the cortisone is pumping through me by this stage. And I have to go and find a taxi driver, like the rest of 4/5 of the world population, it seems to me, are trying to find a taxi driver outside Catania Airport. I find this guy, the Sicilian guy, doesn't speak a word of English. I barely speak a word of Italian. This is going to go really well. He's old school, won't take a debit card. He wants cash. I've given all my cash in bloody tips back at the hotel because Sicily has a tip culture. Unlike anywhere else in the Med, you tip everything. I think it's because I've got a close link to the Americans, the USA. And that goes back to the 5 families of New York and the immigrants at the turn of the century and so the turn of the last century and so forth. So I've got no cash on me. So I go back into the airport. I'm fighting my way through 4/5 of humanity. I go in the escalator down to find the cash point. I get to the cash point, stick my card in the machine. It won't go in. I look at the screen, out of order. I scream. I race back upstairs to the cab driver, who's got Penelope, by the way. I mean, this guy could be part of the Corleonese clan for all I know. He could have whisked her away. He's still there. He's now got ash on his shoulders. I'm brushing ash off his shoulders and saying, "Senor, cash machine kaput." Those were my exact words, and he understood that. The universal language, kaput. So he then drives us the 3 miles to Catania, driving around trying to find a cash machine. He dumps me near a cash machine, says, da, 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 da. So I go, da, 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 find this cash machine. Only gives me €100 in 2 50-euro notes. I go back to him to pay him. He sees the €50 note. I say, how much? He says, €40. It was a 3-mile journey. I've got no other money. I say, fuck it. Excuse my language. There's €50. Get out of my life. We're in the hotel. All is joy. However, in that story of agony and pain, Penny brilliantly used framing. Didn't do it deliberately. And we use framing in our jobs, right? We're going to break bad news to clients. You break the really bad news and say, actually, but thank God that hasn't happened. What's happened is this and this. She said in the airport, oh my God, imagine if we had young children. What a nightmare this would be. And she was so right, because it was a complete catastrophe, right? It was, just a difficult, not catastrophe, first world catastrophe. But if you have a family of screaming kids, can you just imagine how much this would have been amplified? Anyway, long story short, be careful what you wish for. In Taormina, on 2 different nights, we went to this beautiful restaurant called Al Saraceno, the Saracen. You have to walk up these steps. It's 30 minutes of zigzag steps up a steep hill in Sicilian heat. You get to the top, you are dripping wet, but nothing a cold beer won't cure. You go to this beautiful restaurant, has these 3 levels, and you're looking straight out to Etna. And both times I went, I thought to myself, selfishly, I wouldn't mind seeing a mini eruption now. Just, some dead livestock is fine. No dead human beings, but just show me something. Anyway, it didn't happen until the night of us going out to fly out there. So just be careful what you wish for. Etna, by the way, I'll finish now. Etna is absolutely outstanding. I mean, it's over 3 kilometers tall. It's obviously the tallest active volcano in Europe. It dominates the landscape, and it is the female form, the female persona in geographical physical form. It's beautiful, it's almost sensual, it's bewitching, it's brooding, and it's liable to explode for no reason without warning at any given time. That's my story.
Wow.
At least we have an episode title.
You're sounding very calm about the whole thing.
I think it's good to talk. It's good to get it out. This is cathartic. So thank you, gentlemen, for bearing with.
So where are you speaking to us from now?
This fantastic. Well, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see in the backdrop. I'm in this common room. People have already been in. I've had 2 supermodels come in earlier, taking bikini shots of each other on the balcony. Carl was there for that part of the pre-show moment. I'm in a common room in this fantastic Palazzo hotel with very high ceilings. It might be a bit echoey, so apologies for that. It's basically an art gallery that's been converted into a boutique hotel. All the rooms are different. I've got a statue of Batwoman over there, dressed in skin-tight Sicilian garb. People are wandering in and out behind me. Basically, it's chaos. It's fantastic. But this place is fantastic. We're here till Friday. €330 a night. But what are you going to do? You're just everywhere else is booked up because everyone else is in the same predicament. So this is the first time I'm ever going to use my travel insurance. So I've never done it. I'm sure they must have caveats on what you can spend and limits and so forth. But we've got to eat out every day because we can't cook. I'm in a hotel. What do you want me to do? So that's all going to be fun and games. I've got my car parked at Luton. Andy, you'll resonate with this. I booked my car in for Luton. It should have been out there yesterday, Monday. I'm now running a clock up at Luton, and I left my ticket at the hotel in Taormina. So when I get to the barrier, the machine's going to say, you owe £3,000 or something. So that'll be the icing on the cake of my extended Sicilian journey. It is a beautiful island, but you cannot control Mount Etna. That's the lesson.
Well done, Chairman, for making the effort. It's
that was a wonderful episode of Trap. We'll see you all next
time. I know. That concludes Trap 26.
I should have done I should have done Alan's storyteller and spoken over the. Okay, let's thank you for bearing with it. Let's move on to the topical tidbits then. And Carl, markets have gone sideways for 18 months. How are your clients handling that?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about markets going sideways after that eruption from Nicholas Lincoln. So back to the real world of financial planning. So look, I just wanted to, we kind of have discussed this amongst ourselves a little bit over the last while. and talking to a few clients who, when you're kind of reviewing their financial plans, and obviously you got to look at their portfolios, and there's not a whole lot of growth over the last kind of 18 months or so. And it's to, how exactly are you dealing with that? And I suppose, what are you saying to clients? And I think I've had a number of these meetings over the last few weeks, and I asked one client actually after the meeting. I said, look, I know him really well at this stage. He's been a client for a long time, and he'd be a pal of mine as well. And I said, look, do you mind actually giving me a bit of feedback from that meeting? Because I know you're a little bit, he's looking at the dimensional long-term returns for, in his 60-40 fund. And he said, I'm not getting that or anything near that at the moment, and I'm getting a little bit uneasy. So his feedback to me was, look, you communicated very well the whole long-term nature of it, albeit in my head, I'm looking at 5-year terms all the time, this is all about listening to the client. And we can have our own story or our own kind of, way that we want people to think about it, but they're going to think about it whatever way they want. But he did say, look, the important bit was that you listened, and you listened carefully. And then the other thing was that you had empathy. He used that word, that you had empathy to the way I was feeling. And he said that was really important. So I think the important thing, the big message for me coming out of this is not to be dismissive of people's concerns, and taking the time, to sit down, listen to what they have to say. If they're, having a few concerns about how their portfolio is doing, you got to just take the time to be there for them and talk them through it. And, again, we've always said it, financial planning is a process. It's not a one and done. And their portfolio investments are also the same. So, look, I just wanted to bring it up because I know at least a couple of you guys have had similar conversations, and maybe obviously our audience stroke listeners will be kind of coming across the same kind of conversations.
Okay.
So yep. I'll come in on that if I may. Yeah, we had this conversation offline, I think, a week or so ago. I just come out of a meeting at the time with a client, long-standing client of ours, and of course you're looking at portfolios, and it is somewhat sideways for the last little while, and this guy happens to run effectively a listed business, and he's just comparing the share price of his company, which again, it's a bit unfair to compare a single company stock. And he admitted that. He said, I'm being somewhat unfair, but his share price is up 60% or something. Now, there's all reasons for that, but nevertheless, it is an issue, and there is a sense of disappointment. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Carl, in that you can bombard people with logic and say it's the long term. Let's look at the charts over 30 years and stuff, but that doesn't help. Doesn't help anyone. The only thing you can really say, I think, is that on a personal basis, if you're having that one-to-one conversation, look, myself, my family's wealth is invested in exactly the same thing. I'm a bit frustrated by it as well. I'd love it if markets would move up in accordance with annualized returns of 8 or 10% a year, but it's not like that. But I just want you to know I'm in the same boat. I'm a bit disappointed, but we can look at alternatives. We can try to time the market. Is that going to work? No. We can move to other asset classes. Is that going to work? No. We can kind of eliminate any other natural thing and say, unfortunately, it does come with a territory. But I think that idea of I'm exactly the same, I'm not doing anything other than you are, I think that adds something to the conversation. I know you've got a thought on this, Andy.
Yeah, great point, Alan. Yeah, my family's life savings are invested exactly like yours. So yeah, we're certainly in this together. The latest Hum Advisor newsletter blog was about this sideways markets. I think the market's hit the same point 20 times in the last 18 months. It's been quite unprecedented, but wow. The longer you're in this business, things that you never thought you'd see. So that again is the investment business. It just teaches you to be open to seeing new things, things that never happen. So yeah, we are doubling down on all of our normal principles, stick with the plan, invest every single month. You're going to have sideways markets. The market short to medium term is unpredictable. Long term, it's inevitable. All the same sort of stuff. But Carl, it's a good point that sometimes, just allowing clients to be a bit more open with their sort of natural thoughts is
yeah,
good
and
for
us. Just to tie
to
a bow on this, sorry, Andrew.
Go for it.
Just to tie a bow on it and to reiterate a point that Alan made. I was using the dimensional matrix book with the client, right? So when I went through that. I thought I did a really great job. And when I asked for the feedback, he went, and by the way, that matrix book thing that you went through, I couldn't really give a toss about that. I needed to hear you saying the words and you talking through it and you listening to my concerns. So Alan's point was, you can show me any chart you want, right, to prove your point. I just want to have a conversation. So don't be afraid to have a conversation.
It's just data, Carl, and
Correct.
no one gives a shit about data. They care about about emotions, and I think that's the point. It's like if you ever, in the occasions you have an irate client, or just in life in general. I'm sure there's a lot of this going on in Sicily right now. Is that people are shouting and screaming at the EasyJet desk or the hotels or whatever, but sometimes people just want to get something off their chest and feel heard, and that's it. And you try to counter that. Yes, but I've told you it's a long game. That doesn't help anyone. Let them get off their chest, nod in the right places, tell them that you're exactly experiencing the same on a personal, family basis, exactly the same as are your colleagues, and move on. There's not a lot else that we can do. And their faith and their patience will be repaid.
Over to Lick.
Okay, very good. A person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Okay, Mr. Smith, Lombard lending.
Okay. This is just a quick topical tidbit. Something that's sort of come across my radar recently. There's a generally held concept that wealthy people never sell assets. They always own them. They will, if they have a need for liquidity, they will borrow against the strength of their assets and their resources. Now, that is obviously applies traditionally to real estate property markets. People who are big into that market, they just borrow money from the bank, they buy the asset, and when they need more money, they leverage a bit more against it, assuming the asset continues to rise in value over a period of time. Every now and again, we have a client, normally kind of at the high net worth side, that wants to get access to capital and tells us or asks us, look, should we sell down some of the portfolio? And for multiple reasons, including tax and impacting the long-term plan that we've built, that's something that we'd like to avoid if possible. So we've come across situations where, and that's the phrase that is used as Lombard lending, where effectively you borrow money against the strength of your investment portfolio. Now, traditionally, that was the home of the private banks, and they would pretty much insist that in order for them to lend money, that they'd have to manage the assets and all the attendant costs and charges and fees that go with that, as we all know. So I was quite intrigued to be contacted recently by a company called Bondsmith, not Funsmith, Bondsmith. So I was due to meet with them yesterday, but we had a tech issue. I'm going to meet with them in a couple of days. So, do your own research. But this is a new startup business. It is backed by another organization that's provided them with the funding, but they will do this. They'll provide Lombard lending via advisors to advisors' clients against the value of their portfolio without the need to go and speak to Coutts & Co. or a bank or anyone else like that. So, again, do your own research. I don't know much more about it at this stage, but it's an interesting sort of addition to the advisor sort of toolbox, I suppose. So bondsmith.com.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, I think this company is awesome. I was waiting for a company like this to launch. Just to be fair to private banks, this is a huge benefit of being a client of a private bank. If you've got 50 million invested and you need 3 million for some temporary transaction, back in the good old days of low interest rates, you were much better off borrowing the money at 1% rather than paying CGT on liquidating the assets. And as you say, Alan, ruining the plan. So it is a massive, massive draw for private banks. In the US, it's even bigger. I don't think Musk or Bezos have ever sold any stock in Amazon or Tesla. They've always borrowed against it. And they borrowed billions and billions against it. That's obviously an extreme example, but that's an example to bring it to life. The CGT situation in the UK is getting worse, but so's the cost of borrowing. So it's great that the company's launch, and innovation in finance is always, welcomed. I'm intrigued to see how Bondsmith get on. I had a case a couple of years ago with a lawyer where they were going to crystallize a massive CGT hit on a couple of property transactions. Anyway, I said, why don't you do, bridging finance, which is a similar form of it, but obviously it's secured against properties. And back then they could get the funding for about 0.75% a month rather than have a massive CGT liability. So again, as financial advisors, certainly me, I'm in the money business. I want to know everything that's happening, and then I'll work out if things, are useful for my clients. So yeah, I'm excited about Bondsmith and seeing how they're going to get on. And obviously it will be good if there's a bit of competition in the market. I had a brief look at the PDF that you sent, Alan. I think they're lending a couple of % above base, which seems pretty attractive. So I'm somewhat excited about them coming into the market. Who's next?
Okay, good stuff. It's me. Very quick one. You haven't got a comment necessarily, just a snapshot of what I think is happening in the buy-to-let market at large. I have, for my sins, and I'm never going to do it going forward, got a couple of clients on my books with buy-to-let portfolios. I'm coming to the view, people say you shouldn't take your own prejudices into a client situation. If clients want to invest in property, that's their God-given right. And I absolutely agree. But it doesn't mean you have to work with those clients. I just find buy-to-lets, you're doing cash flow modeling, you're trying to meet future liabilities with future relatively known cash flows, dividends being thrown out of portfolios or unit encashment, and then buy-to-lets are so lumpy and horrible. And now you've got this thing. I've got a client who's got a buy-to-let. The rent is 850 quid a month. I think that's net of management charges. Let's assume it is. And the mortgage on the buy-to-let was 194 quid. So what's that? 600 odd quid in quotes profit before tax and upkeep and everything else, right? All the hidden costs, all the void periods that you don't want to talk about. And his 194 quid mortgage is coming to an end. And the mortgage, if he left it, didn't do anything, was going up to 700 quid, basically wiping out effectively any profit after tax on the cost of the buy-to-let. And I just think this picture is must be being replicated up and down in the UK. I don't know about Ireland so much, but I imagine you've had a rising interest rate environment as well there, Carl. And just a snapshot. And I'm saying to this client, listen, in your cash flow, him and his wife have got 4 buy-to-lets between them. The idea has always been to sell these, disinvest, and bring some liquidity into your lives. It's going to be easy going forward. And the numbers are insane. Why would you keep a buy-to-let? So I don't necessarily need you guys to comment on it. Carl, your hand is raised, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, just a quick one. Like my phrase on that is, when you're doing financial planning and you're looking at people who have buy-to-lets, we love property in Ireland. By God, we love it. You cannot sell a window out of a house. So when you need liquidity, you've got a big problem. And, moving a house on, as we all know, I have a client who's trying to sell one at the moment. He's sold it 4 times. So it's closed 4 times. And for various reasons, the sale hasn't gone through. So look, like you're saying, I'm not sure what that was. But anyway, yeah.
Then had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Give me the fright of my life.
That's just Nick, how Nick is feeling right now. But, buy-to-lets and having illiquid assets, problems down the line would be my view.
Sorry for the unexpected drop. That's your typical buy-to-let investor when they get their mortgage renewal statement coming through every minute, every day in the UK. Okay, great stuff. Mr. Hart, you've had a nice time away in Port del Soler.
Yeah, fortunately I got back. There wasn't any volcano eruptions on the island of Mallorca. So I went quite light-hearted. I went to Port de Soler, or Soya, they call it in Spain. Soya is the area. I was staying in the port area. Back to Alan's point a couple of podcasts ago about finding your place. Bold statement alert. I think I might have found my place. Port de Soler is amazing. I like sort of medium-sized resorts. It's got a beautiful port. It's almost, circular, the port. So I went running most mornings, stayed in the awesome hotel called the Bikini Island Hotel. Fabulous hotel. It's adults only. It's not what you're thinking, dirty minds. But yeah, there was no kids there, which is obviously useful for me because I don't like going away and leaving my kids. So I don't want to see them running around the swimming pool and just missing them and such. Amazing place. I had my out of office on, my OOO. I did a little bit of work. I was away for a couple of days and I got a bit itchy and scratchy, so I had to release it and check some emails and do some work.
Did you have a humble brag?
No, I didn't have a HBOOO. I just said I'm out for most of August. I'll try and reply when I can. I didn't check my client emails.
That is a humble brag. I'm sorry. That is a humble brag.
I'm taking a month off.
Well, I'm not exactly taking a month off. I'm doing this. I've been working every freaking day. I've taken about 4 days.
Why say it then?
Because that's the intention.
Everything you complain about, you do.
I made a public statement. That was the intention. Anyway, it's a fantastic place. Bikini Island Hotel and Port de Soler. I can't recommend it enough. The weather was awesome. I hate when it's too hot, so I'm sort of mid-high 20s. I prefer. Shall I go on to my next important point, Chairman?
Go on to that from your adults only hotel called Bikini Hotel. That doesn't sound at all like something you could find on Pornhub with a couple of clicks.
It's one of those hotels that can go horribly wrong or horribly right, and it went horribly right. It's like White Lotus season 1. It's like that. It's sort of like the sort of Bali tiki kind of vibe. Yeah, awesome. Check it out if you want to go for a weekend away without your kids. Okay, the important point is, I'm singling out Scottish Widows and a couple of funds that they have, mainly because of the name of it and mainly because of the returns. There are other funds from other providers, as we know, that are heavily involved in bonds that have had an absolute, nightmare in terms of returns over the last couple of years. So I'm singling them out because of the name of the fund, but the sort of message can be sort of transferred. Anyway, they've got these fund portfolios called the Pension Protector Series. This was flagged to me by David Hearn on Twitter, so shout out to David Hearn. I think it's called Don't Delay, his Twitter handle. Anyway, some of these funds are now down, last 3 years, they're down minus 40%. From peak to trough, so high point to a low point, some of them are down minus 55. And there would have been some retirees that have placed, or advisors have advised them to place their money in this fund that's framed perfectly called the Pension Protector Fund. We're trying to be positive on this show, but I mean, this is just bad practice. That they've framed and named
Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my lord.
Okay, I will continue. That's
Explain.
A new drop.
Positivity, baby, positivity. Tree-hugging West Coast, George Kinder, make your clients cry, positivity. That's what we bring to the show.
I love it.
Right, Andy, crack on with this story. Come on.
Okay, so that's it, basically. These funds are framed and called the Pension Protector Series funds. They've had an absolute diabolical performance, and I'm sure they were pitched and framed from the marketing departments of these fund management companies, which fund management companies are basically marketing companies first and foremost, financial companies secondary, as sort of we are as financial advisors. That's another point. These funds have done terribly, terribly, terribly badly, and they've been framed for investors and retirees as a safe haven for their money. Why is this not being called out? Consumer duty.
Well, hang on.
The regulation.
You understand, just go without, I mean, you're absolutely right, everything you say, but there's a direct correlation with these funds. The point is, it's about protecting the income, the annuity income.
No, it's not, Alan. These are standard investment funds.
That's what they're designed for. They're basically buying long-dated gilts, is effectively what the underlying asset class of these funds is.
I don't think
annuity rates, as we discussed in the last episode or annuity rates have gone up in direct proportion to these funds going down.
No, I don't think these funds are designed to park money.
100%
to park money short term to then buy an annuity.
They
were originally designed for that. I used to sell them back in my days in Alperton, Nick.
You used to shovel these funds into the wheelbarrow.
They are called pension protection.
They sold like hotcakes, mate. But it worked because in those days everyone did buy an annuity. There was nothing else you could do.
I thought the reality is these were a new series, Pension Protector. Okay, fine.
They've been
whatever. They've had a terrible time in terms of their returns.
You know what would be interesting? I don't know if these statistics are available, but what proportion of the retiring public annuitized now? So if they're designed, I'm talking about workplace pensions, people retiring with 100, 200 grand in a pension pot, they automatically, because I mean, going into drawdown generally requires some quite sophisticated advice often. And there's only, I think, what's the numbers, 10 or 15% of adults in the UK ever receive or pay for advice of any description. So maybe the vast majority are still annuitizing. Maybe.
No, they're not.
I don't know.
They're not. They're
not.
So
what are people doing with a 100 grand pension pot at age 65? And they're in one of these workplace funds. They're just leaving it.
I do come across the data once every year, but off the top of my head, I don't want to quote any of the stats.
Okay. Well, we can get into the weeds about this and start talking about stats and averages. And let's try and keep it punchy. So, Mr. Smith, Morningstar report. Why do investors hire advisors? Do you want to give us a short overview of what that's about?
Yeah, just a very short one. I quite like Morningstar these days. They do seem to produce some quite regular, high quality independent reports.
Agreed.
Evidence-based, data-driven, etc. So I must be on their mailing list. They are big into the whole concept of behavioral research. This came out of the Morningstar behavioral research team. And it's just a nice 12-page paper based on research, speaking with customers and clients. I mean, to some degree, it doesn't tell people who are, real financial planners doing behavioral investment coaching. It won't tell you anything you didn't already know, which is clients come to you often for a specific financial or investment problem to be solved, but really underneath it, which is the art in the work that we do or try to do, underneath it is more of there's a behavioral issue. There's this kind of a more broader based set of challenges. And so it explains all that, goes into some detail, having based on research they did with actual clients who hire advisors. But more than that, what's useful about this paper, and there is a link to it in the show notes, is it gives you an example, because although that we all intuitively know this stuff, we know by experience, it does an analysis of advisors, collateral, materials, and websites. And there's a disconnect, because advisors still talk about products on their websites and the materials, and they still talk about things like doing your financial plan. There's something missing in terms of the language. So it gives you some specific templates and examples, which I think are quite helpful, to say the missing part in your client communication, the thing that would reassure your clients or prospective clients, is by using some of this narrative, some of this language. It actually gives you a sort of template client value proposition. Now, it wouldn't be something you just copy and paste necessarily, but it gives you a kind of a few outlines and a few suggestions based on their research. So it's definitely worth 12 pages or whatever it is to having a look at. There we go.
Superb stuff. And I think our final topical tidbit is another Morningstar report. So they obviously are the belle to the ball. And this is from The Voice. Voice, tell us about your one.
Yeah, and I didn't know Alan was going to share that one from Morningstar, but this is another Morningstar report called Mind the Gap. Very good. I have the link in the show notes, but the thing that kind of stood out for me was, I suppose, look, we're all looking to get affirmation that we're doing the right thing, but one of the stats that came out of it was people who are in one fund, and maybe that's an equity bond portfolio, but one portfolio fund, are doing better than people who have a kind of conglomerate of various funds in there. And there's now evidence to kind of, back that up. And I think, look, you can read the report yourself, but I think what happens is, some of the smaller funds, they change, or you need to change them, or they're going into other funds. So there's more temptation to go tweaking, and that damages your return in the long term. So look, again, like what Alan said, I could go into loads of detail on that, but I don't think it'd be good right now to do it, but definitely look into the report. Really good stuff in there.
That is a mind-blowing stat, Carl. I'll definitely be taking a look at that. So why do we think that is? Is it like they're more committed to that fund? They've told themselves a stronger story? It's the IKEA effect. They own this one thing now. They're going to protect it with all their heart. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think like one of the points was, like, within those portfolio funds, they're rebalanced, right? So you don't have to go every year and start tinkering around with the rebalancing and all of that kind of stuff. And then I think the point was, that sometimes you might have an absolute return fund in there, or a crypto fund in there, or a REIT or something like that, and they become not fit for purpose anymore. So you have to start tinkering with it. And then you might start tinkering with the overall asset allocation, blah, blah, blah. So, look, we've all seen, like, the Dalbar study, the behavior gap from Carl Richards, that little sketch that he does. So we're kind of aware of this, but I think it's more evidence, again, more research to show that the less you tinker with your portfolio, the better you're going to do.
Yeah, it reminds me of the money's like a bar of soap. The less you touch it, the more you have. Back to you, Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. Great stuff. Yeah, I think we're all gradually making a transition to some kind of one fund solution for our clients. And maybe we'll talk about that at a future show. There's actually a question on today's agenda from our TRAPists about that. If we have time, we will address that in further detail. Great stuff. I think we've got through the topical tidbits. We put a good timestamp on this episode. So let's move across to what many people call the meat and potatoes of the show. Now, we four, useless hombres may come across as being the epitome of what a superb financial advisor should be. But in reality, we've all made our fair share of calamitous mistakes. And one of the reasons we do, we churn out these piles of trap is to share not just the good stuff, but the bad stuff. So hopefully you don't go through the bad stuff. In life, if something bad happens, the worst thing you can do is not learn from that mistake. Right? You make mistakes, and the worst thing you can do is not learn from them. So we've all made mistakes. So the meat and potatoes today is talking about the big mistakes that we've all made. We've got some solo advisor firms in Trap, and we've got some bigger firms in Trap. So we've all done things from different perspectives. I think Mr. Smith, but you're going to lead off on this one with your biggest mistake and what you would do differently. The lessons you've learned from it, please.
No. I think I'm going to gird my loins and share. But I think Carl said he'd kick off first.
Oh, sorry, I'd forgotten.
Just to do a sort of a gentle entry to the world of pesos. You go, Carl.
I'm not so sure mine is gentle. And look, I think I suggested that we do this because we are, I suppose putting ourselves out there as, this is how to run your firm the best way or whatever. But it would be remiss of us not to say that, look, we've made many, many mistakes along the way. And God knows, continue to make many mistakes along the way. And I'd say, when you're running your business, there isn't a month that goes by that you wouldn't reflect and go, wish I did that differently. So when I thought about this, I went, okay, if I was to, roll back 10 years, what are the really big ones? What are the ones that stick out that I think, if I didn't make those mistakes, it would have had a fundamental, more positive impact on our firm? So I think the first one for me is recruiting poorly. And I think when you think about recruitment, and we're going through it at the moment, right? And we've some really good people joining us, have already joined and going to join over the next while, right? But when I think back as to, when I recruited, recruitment is a little bit like financial planning in that there's science and there's art, right? So the science is, say, the CV and, the numbers and the data and the psychometric testing. And the art is, how does this person make you feel? Are your values aligned? That kind of softer stuff, right?
Spot on.
And I might have, I definitely got maybe blinded by the science a little bit, by the CV, by the track record, all of that stuff. Past performance is not necessarily a guide to future performance. And I would say when I try and analyze that, and it's just that the recruitment, the people who we kind of took into the business just weren't a fit for Metis, right? It's not to say that they weren't really good people and could, and have done really well elsewhere. And this doesn't go for everybody who's left the business, by the way, right? But it's certainly my experience in a few, right? And what I would say is, when I reflect, and I'm totally and utterly honest and being a little bit vulnerable here, I would say that the conflict that I didn't get over and I didn't think about was the values as to Metis Ireland, why we do business, the integrity as to... And they'll also see that I was deeply uncomfortable with the content of some of today's podcast, owing to the Irish versus UK cultural differences.
Sorry, Carl, I played that just as you were opening up some deep emotional fissure in your psyche.
No, it's not necessarily emotional. It's just maybe some of the softer stuff. It's like, what are our values? Alan mentioned, client value proposition. What really is that? What are our beliefs? And we have in our other boardroom here, which I think you've seen before, our promise to you, what we promise our clients. And that was conflicted with my ambition to grow the firm. So getting blinded by numbers, someone who, I totally believe in that whole financial planning thing that you're doing. And I knew, looking at them, right, my gut told me, they're just going to product sell and they're going to just move across clients on a product selling basis. And it didn't fit well with Metis. So I would say that I've learned massively from that. And I also way more trust my gut when I'm talking to somebody. And if I get a good feel from them, yeah, that's kind of on my bit on recruitment. So, Alan, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, if I just come in there, as soon as you started, I wasn't going to talk about this, but of course you start talking about recruitment, and my mind goes back to my early days of recruiting, and I think I recruited wrongly, but for probably a different set of reasons that you did. And I look back with and I laugh about it. And I've never really fallen out with anyone that's ever worked for us, but I've definitely hired the wrong people. My main criteria in the early days of business, when money was super tight, was how low are salary expectations? What do they expect to get paid? Oh, that one doesn't want much. We can bring them in because we'll teach them how to be good. And I kid you not, and this is nothing negative or personal about the people. I'm still friends with these people. I still bump into them now and again. One of our early administrators, his main day job was a pub singer. He was a sort of Elvis Presley impersonator. I'm not kidding. His name is Dave. I think he had a part-time job, worked on Saturdays at Nationwide Building Society. So I thought, well, he must know about financial admin. He came in with me for a couple of years. He was a good guy, but his main dream was, being at the Albert Hall doing Elvis covers or something. But even worse than that, we had this other guy. We had a girl work for us, and we needed to hire another administrator. And I said, I need to go out to the market. She said, my brother's available. He'll be available to work, pretty much straight away. I said, fantastic, brilliant. Same as a recruitment fee. What is it? Where is he currently working? Is an administrator somewhere else? She goes, no, he's a painter and decorator. I said, that's fine, bring him in. So this guy worked for us, albeit for a couple of weeks. So I can relate in different ways. Some of the early recruitment methods that I deployed, you learn pretty quickly. It's actually a bit of a false economy to bring in people who are not really have no interest in doing the job, and you can get them for relatively low cost. But sorry to interrupt, Carl.
No, totally. And look, I think that the most important thing is, cultural fit. That's absolutely massive because, we have a small team here, and we have a good thing going here, and one bad apple then can spread, and you do not want that. So trust your gut is what I would say. Don't all just believe in the science. So look, that's my piece on recruitment. So do you want me to jump into my other big mistake, Nicholas?
Yes, jump into your other big one, Carl.
Okay, so burning bridges. And this is, again, being vulnerable, right? So I've told the story about working for a brokerage firm before I set up on my own in 2010. And when I left the firm, I thought and hoped that I did everything kind of right. And of course, when I set up my business, the two guys that I was working with, and I was a director in the business, right? They did everything they could to protect their business. And I got a little bit bitter about that. Now, when I look back and I reflect now, they didn't do anything I wouldn't do now. And it meant that there was a falling out, right? Now, there was a few things that they did that maybe I wished they didn't do, but certainly there was a lot of things that I did that I wish now that I didn't do, because I had worked with those guys for Noel and Colin. They were fantastic guys. It was definitely pre-financial planning days in Ireland at all. So whilst it was product selling, I wouldn't say that those guys did anything ever that wasn't with integrity and wasn't in the best interest of their clients. And I still say that about the guys. And the sad part for me is, because I burnt my bridges there, two guys who I learned so much from, who were really, really good guys and really good friends of mine, I created, a kind of a chasm there. I've actually tried over the last couple of years to reconnect a small bit and build those bridges. It's a little bit difficult, calling a spade, but I just wanted to put it out there because I know I can see it happening to other people maybe at the moment. And I know that a lot of our listeners, so we get a lot of inquiries from people who are working for firms and are talking about going out on their own and whatever. And you just got to understand, and just, the business is a big, bad world, right? And people are they're going to do everything they can to protect their business. You just got to accept that, and you got to roll with those punches. And I would say, it definitely didn't do me any favors to be burning any bridges. And it also played on my mind for a long time. So that was energy I didn't need to be expending on stuff that I could have prevented if I had acted differently. So, I think it's really, really important. Alan, you made the point there. You haven't fallen out with anyone who's left your business. I actually can't say the same. However, what I can say is there are very, very few, very, very few. And I will hopefully continue to do that. So I think it's really important, especially for those younger advisors out there who have ambitions to go it alone. You know, you just, it doesn't do you any favors. And you never know, like keeping good relations with people who you've previously done business with will always provide opportunity in the future. And I drew a line under those opportunities, and I wish I didn't. So look, that's another point.
I think that's great advice, Carl. I think and it would be exactly the same in Ireland, if not more so. The financial services community in the UK is very small, very tight knit, and everyone knows everyone else, or they know someone who knows someone else. And if you've done a wrong turn to whoever it is, to a competitor, another firm, so it gets known. And one thing that is the most important thing any of us have got, particularly in this sector, is our reputation. Without that, you've got nothing. And I've seen a few things that happened in the past. I managed to navigate. I've got situations now, people I've known 15, 20 years ago. And just because, and we might not have agreed on certain things, but we haven't really caused big bust-ups. So I think it's really good advice, particularly for younger planners.
Yeah, I mean, this business is not 6 degrees of separation. It's 2 degrees of separation. You know, it's an incredibly tight-knit community. So yeah, good points on that. Back to you, Carl. Hopefully Alan doesn't interrupt you on your third point.
No, I think, look, the interaction is good. And I think other
conversation, Andrew.
Yeah. I think other points of view are good. So look, I would say I don't think necessarily I did do damage to my reputation, but I can tell you that I regretted how it all played out. And I definitely could have, you know, if there was a junction in the road, I could have gone right, but I chose left because I knew it all. And I didn't. I think you don't know it all.
Carl, don't worry about you doing damage to your reputation. We're doing it on your behalf, okay? All right.
My association with you guys is doing that anyway.
So, Carl, are those your mistakes?
Well, look, I just quickly do the last one. So the last one is when lockdown happened, right? It was what do we do next? So it was like, right, let's do virtual coffees. And I was being pushed by our marketing firm at the moment that, you know, you got to get out there, don't go into your shell. And that was great advice. So we went on to do these virtual coffees. And the very first one, we sent out a public Zoom link. And we got loads of people registering. And I was like, whoo, happy days. Now, I should have known when one guy registered as Ben Dover.
That was your red flag siren, wasn't it, Carl? Come on.
Yes. So anyway, suffice to say that we got everyone into the Zoom call and everyone's cameras were on, and there was a lot of people who were doing very, very questionable things live on camera. So I had to stupidly, I was doing the tech as well, which is, you guys all know, that never works well. So I had to try and kick these people out and then keep the whole thing going. And it got a little bit of media exposure, didn't it, Alan? But anyway.
Apparently.
Anyway, the important thing, and here's about the resilience and about, you know, getting up and going again. We did not decide that was the end of the virtual coffees. And we ended up doing virtual coffees all through lockdown. And we got somewhere between 60 and 80 people on a virtual coffee every week with guest speakers. And it was absolutely fantastic for us. So I look, just generally speaking, you know, learn from your mistakes, but have the resilience to keep going. Don't let them knock you back. So that's me. Thank you for allowing me to share those with you.
That's super. I in a different life, I actually worked with someone called Denver Dover. He was an MEP, believe it or not, for UKIP. Denver, so it's Den Dover. What were his parents thinking? It's just wow. Okay.
I don't know, Lick.
Yeah, I might as well be christened Lick now, might I? Okay, so let's go on to me as the solo advisor, a different perspective, and Andy and I have a different pressure points and different processes to you guys with multi-staff firms. And I have gone on about this before, but I would say to anybody who's in the solo advisor space or thinking about going into it, this whole thing about thinking that you have to have one of these awful off-the-shelf back office systems. You just do not need it. When I went out in 2008 on my own, I thought the brand name, it sounds like Auntie Flo. Okay, and I got anti-flow, this back office system, all whistles and bells, and it was just, you needed to go on loads of learning modules. It was clunky. I just didn't need it. I'll go to my grave convinced that as a solo advisor, you just need the best of breed tech in the various areas. You need Dropbox or a good equivalent. You need the paid for version of Gmail, because then you get to the search facility of Google. And I can find emails from 2008 with a couple of keywords. Bang, it's just there. You need a good calendar. That's going to be the Google Calendar. You need a scheduling thing, Calendly, and you need a decent task app. And there are loads of them. And all of those apps I've just mentioned, if you get an outsourced power planner or an outsourced advisor, you can add them to the app so you can do back and forth. You can see audit trails as well. What you don't need is a back office system. These are legacies from the days when you had agencies with 38 different insurance companies. You had renewals coming in on the drip, and you had to reconcile the commission statements. And if nothing else, they send out a behavioural message to me, it's cognitive dissonance. These back office systems that say, yeah, we allow your clients to log in via a portal so they can see their investments all in one place 24/7. And yet we as behavioural investment counsellors are saying to our clients, the last thing you want, by all means, go ahead, it's your money, right? But the last thing you really want to do is look at your investments 24/7. You want to look at your investments every 24 weeks over the next 7 decades of your life. That's the 24/7 we're talking about. And even that's too much. So I just think I think when you become a financial advisor, when you pass your exams, they must put some serum into your bloodstream that makes you think, I need a back office system, because we just automatically go out and then search them. You don't need them. My biggest mistake was taking out a back office system with anti-flow. I didn't need it, and I was locked in for 6 months. It was quite an expensive contract, and I couldn't break it. On the back of my Sicilian escapades, I'm going to quickly talk about something I haven't made a mistake of, but it could happen. Thank God I did bring my laptop out with me. For the first 7 nights of our scheduled stay here, I didn't look at it. I was really good. I did have an out of office saying, listen, I'm not looking at emails. If you're a dear client friend, send me a WhatsApp if it's urgent, and I'll come back to you. But if it's not urgent and you bug me, I know where you live. That was my out of office. I didn't look at my laptop because I knew that out of office had gone out to anyone who had emailed me. But now I've got the laptop. I'm making the best of what's happened to Penny and I. We're stuck here. That's lovely, great, first world problems, but at least I can work. So don't go on holiday without your laptop, because you never know when you might be near an airport, that might be near a volcano that might erupt out of the blue. That's my do not do. Always take a laptop with you, just in case. If you don't get it out of the bag, great, fantastic, but have it there. Andy.
Wow, Nick, you don't come out with many pearls of wisdom, but ones you do, they're absolutely banging. 24/7, every 24 months for 7 decades.
Yeah. I made that on the hoof. I was trying to think if those numbers actually were, but that's good.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
Much.
That's how often you should check your investment portfolio, if at all. If you want to, it's a 24/7 schedule. Brilliant, Nick. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, so that's me from the solopreneur stuff. Now. Shall I do it? I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it now because this is a beauty.
Grab yourself a drink. A very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
So, Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. I haven't heard that drop for a couple of episodes, so I actually welcome it back, because this is a bit of a tale. I've never spoken publicly about this. We've spoken privately with you guys. I'm not going to name names, obviously, but this was an experience that I went through a couple of years ago now, but it's still fresh in my memory. Such was the kind of the pain of it. Brief backstory is, as we sort of evolve, we're all of us on this podcast, and most other advisors that I speak to, we're growth oriented. We want to grow our businesses one way or another, organically, through whatever methods you adopt. One of the things that we decided to do, myself and my sort of team leadership team, we want to explore the possibility of acquisitions, because there's loads of other firms who are doing it. Let's go out and the sort of the conversation was around, let's go and buy 2 or 3 smaller businesses, tuck them into our business, and then we'll sort of grow. We can double in size. We can move, organically and inorganically. How difficult can it be? Was the view? Oh God. Now, so you guys obviously shared some of my pain going through this, but in summary, having decided this, we were going to look for some acquisitions, and I was tasked with the job. And I didn't have to look too far, because I took a phone call in October of 2020. And if you remember 2020, in October, it was that year we were kind of obviously in lockdown. They were in and out of lockdown. We'd had the summer where in the UK, it was sort of, what was that offer they had, eat out to help out or something. So in and out of that, we were subsequently going to go back into lockdown at Christmas. But in October of 2020, because it's indelibly etched on my brain, I took a phone call on my mobile phone, unsolicited, by somebody who said, "Hi, Alan, you don't know me, but would you like to buy my business?" And I thought, well, just so happens that we have decided that we do want to buy businesses. Tell me more. So then began a process, which went on actually for another 12 months, because I started negotiating to acquire another financial planning business. And my God, was it painful. So we go through from October, is the usual negotiations for price, for deal structure, for terms, etc. That, of course, involves me because I'm immediately out of my depth. I've done a couple of very small acquisitions when I got started, but apart from that, I've never done anything else. And you enter into a new world. There's words, there's language, there's terminology that I'm not used to dealing with. You've got to appoint lawyers, and lawyers aren't cheap. And you start getting involved in multiple conversations and with banks and funding and all that sort of stuff that goes on. Runs through to Christmas of that year. We've agreed terms. And there was a rush on then to complete the deal. Because if you remember, there was going to be a budget. If I recall the budget, our then Chancellor, who's now our Prime Minister, was running a budget in February. And so the deal had to be done because there was an expectation that capital gains tax were going to be changed and significantly uplifted. So pressure was on to get the deal done, get it completed before the budget. At Christmas, I'll never forget this. I actually got COVID at Christmas. And I'll tell you, I was wiped out for a week. And it was that time, we were all in lockdown anyway, but I had to still show up for Zoom meetings with lawyers and stuff. And I was wrecked physically, but we couldn't afford to lose a day. We tried to get everything through. So, December 23rd, I'm on Zoom calls. I'm deeply ill, just to trying to get this deal across the line. We carry on. We do everything that's expected. Loads of negotiations back and forward. But comes February budget time, you need to get obviously clearance from the regulator. And they had such a backlog of work to do. We've done everything we could do, but the regulator, the FCA, didn't clear it in time. So everyone sat there with bated breath, working out or waiting to see whether capital gains tax rates would be changed. And if you recall, they weren't. No changes were made. So everyone breathes a sigh of relief and on we go. And at that moment, everything began to change because the seller of this business suddenly had enough time on his hands. Meantime, if you think of what was going on then, markets were continuing to go up. Markets were racing away. We'd kind of got used to this kind of COVID lifestyle. Businesses were carrying on to one degree or another. And there began just a death by 1,000 cuts. It was an ongoing series of negotiations back and forward. I think we were in and out of lockdown again. I'm back into doing Zoom calls with the seller. Bearing in mind, this is a very small selling business. Very small business that was being sold. And therefore, we just thought we'll just do it ourselves. Me as the buyer, him as the seller. And it just got it got a little bit personal. It got a little bit direct. And the terms, which had originally been agreed completely, documented in what's called the heads of terms, which unless there's something material changes, we should all stick to that. This is what we've agreed. They kept being chipped away at. The seller still said, well, can we change this? Can we adapt that? And you know what? Looking back, this was a classic example of sunk cost fallacy. You're all familiar with sunk cost fallacy. I think, well, I'm too into this now. It's been months and months and months. I've racked up, at that time, tens of thousands of pounds of legal bills. Oh, fine, I'll agree to that. I'll agree to that. Kept going. And it's very time consuming. It takes up a lot of your kind of mental brain space. And on it goes until the point when the seller said, actually, it's been going on for so long, not through my fault. You're not paying me enough. I need more money. At which point I said, no, that's not going to happen. We've agreed terms. We can fine tune the detail, but I am not paying any more. That became a bit of a standoff for several weeks. Eventually, he came back to the table, said, fine, let's go ahead. I'm not happy about the terms. Let's go ahead. And you know what? And then it got delayed a couple of other times. And I'm just getting a worse and worse feeling about this. and I've still racked up fees. It's dominated my life for such a long time. And it's just a little bit of, if everyone ever considers getting into acquisitions, just recognize, unless you're going to appoint someone else to do all the work for you, everything else takes a back burner. It sits on the back burner. Your life, if you're the principal or the lead person in the company, your life will be dominated by this on an ongoing basis. All the different people to speak to, lawyers, accountants, the seller, multiple other participants. And on it goes and on it goes. And there's still little chips and requests for more, requests for this. And as I say, each one of those, they weren't big in themselves, but they mount up. And I can tell you guys know me well. I'm pretty laid back in most things in life. I sleep well at night. Nothing really phases me too much, but I was actually having sleepless nights. I was waking up at 1 a.m., 3 a.m. thinking, shit. The upside to this deal is pretty good, but the downside is really bad in our business. If this just falls off, because I've got to work with this person. You know, when you do an acquisition, it's not like the seller, because we're in the relationship business. As we know, you want the seller to stay around to sort of facilitate the handover, make sure that everything, because all you're doing is buying relationships, isn't it? You're buying their clients that they've known for 20 or 30 years or something. So you need that person to be around. And increasingly, I'm not enjoying this relationship that's been built up. Look, to some degree, if you're a seller, you want to maximize your sale value. But in my opinion, in my experience, and other people that I know who were party to this transaction, saw it for what it was. And I'm just getting an increasingly bad feeling about this. I woke up early, having had another couple of delayed completions. We finally got a completion date agreed. And it's a few weeks away from the point. It's now nearly a year after the initial phone call. And I just wake up super early one morning. I'm out in the park taking a long walk. And I'm just thinking, I'm not a religious person, but I say, like, universe, send me a sign. If they ask for one more, I don't care what the change is. If they just want to use a different colored pen that we agreed to sign the contract, that will be the final straw. Anything else changes now, I'm walking away. Sure enough, my phone rings, and it's the accountant who's doing the completion accounts on this. And he said, yeah, they've asked for this tweak. It's not a big tweak, but they've asked for this. And I said, I'm not going to do it. Go back and tell them I'm not changing it. I don't care what it is. I'm not changing it. Goes away, comes back 5 minutes later. No, they're insisting on it. I say, thank you very much. Do no more. Leave it with me. Hung up, got a taxi to my office. In the taxi, called my accountant, said, I'm pulling out. I don't care. I'm pulling out now. Got into the office, gathered the team together, announced it to them. Really interesting sort of result and experience for the team. The team were in some ways disappointed because they've all sort of put their heart and soul behind. This is going to be quite an interesting acquisition for us. They were going to be taking on new, really, high quality clients, but they could see it for what it was. They could see this was going to be a potentially dangerous relationship and a potentially dangerous sort of addition to the company. And I'm just sort of wrapping up now because this is all about lessons learned. This is about errors and mistakes. And you know what? When the position that I was in, I was surrounded with advisors. Don't get me wrong. I've got a fantastic accountant. I've got a business advisor. I've got a strong team, leadership team, experienced people. But ultimately, in this situation, it was me who has to make a decision. And I'm 6 figures deep in legal fees by this point, way over £100,000. And not only that, the opportunity cost of a year of my life doing not much else but this.
Huge.
At that point, 2 weeks away from completion, just deciding to walk away from that. So I did. I walked away. I said, I'm pulling out now. No, thanks. I'm not going to complete. I know that we're close to it. And, the buyer came back. Let's just agree. We don't worry about that last. I said, it's too late. There's one thing, and actually it relates to the conversation we had a moment ago, Carl, your point. All we've got in this business is trust. And if I don't trust, and it might be me, it might not be the seller.
Yeah.
But if there's any lack of trust in such an important relationship, and my colleagues had lost faith and lost trust, then you got to take a view and make a hard decision. And I made a hard decision. And Nick, can I just come up with the final point, which is what I've learned? That'd be okay. It's important for us to have a post-mortem on this because of the cost to the business of this non-transaction. We sat down with my team and we just literally went through it. Right, Alan? And I was kind of being interviewed. What happened? How did it start? Well, I took a phone call from this guy. Fine. When was that? October. Right, mark it up. Then what happened? Then what happened? And we mapped the whole thing across. We got our whiteboard in our boardroom, wrote the whole thing up. And every time I said something, then the team went, well, that was a red flag, wasn't it? And of course, I wasn't telling the team every single thing that went on because it would just drive them nuts because things were going on every day. So we said, well, that was a red flag. And that was a red flag. And we've got this big, massive whiteboard. And my colleague Don said, it's the funniest thing I think he's ever said, looking at this board by the end of the sort of our post-mortem we had, he said, there's more red flags on that board than a Chinese Communist Party rally. You know, how could you not have seen this? And the trouble is, it's death by 1,000 cuts because you don't. If they all happened the first month, you just say, "Wow, this is crazy."
It's the boiling frog.
So, boiling frog, exactly what it was. Until such time, you put them all down, you think. So, quick lessons. The lessons I've learned from that. If you're ever going to get involved in a serious transaction, buying, selling, anything else, but a significant one, even hiring a big member of your team, anything like that, don't do it yourself. We're personal, we're human beings, and it's too personal, it's too emotional for this. Go and hire somebody, hire a coach, a consultant, somebody to do that face-to-face negotiation. It'd be well worthwhile. Secondly, 3 strikes and you're out. Whatever your rules are, whatever you've agreed, this is what we're doing. If the person changes once, that's fine. Twice, maybe 3 times, that's it. Done. Whatever the reason, move out. And last of all, and again, alludes to a point I made earlier, trust your intuition, go with your gut. If it just feels, despite what the spreadsheets say, despite what the forecasts say, if it just doesn't feel right, live to fight another day.
That's the point I was making earlier on. If it feels ick, it's ick. Walk away.
Just walk away. Even though you're going, but look at the cost, look at the time we spent. No. If the downside feels worse than the potential upside, walk the hell away. Thank you for indulging me. That's it. I feel cathartic. I've done it. I've got it off my chest.
That is absolutely brilliant. That's for, I think for many Trappists, that'll be worth just listening to this episode just for that segment alone. And yeah, really, really great stuff. Now, listen, in the interest of time, I think we need to go on to our final member of the Trap Pack, Mr. Hart. Now, I don't think I've ever known you make any mistakes ever, Andy. So this is going to be interesting.
Andy, the ultra crepidarian Andy. He knows about everything, Andy. Can't be told anything. His name is Andrew Hart. Andrew Hart!
Are you just getting me back for the Pearls of Wisdom comment earlier on? Anyway, okay, so moving on with my mistakes. A couple of platitudes before we get started. There is no shortcuts with success. It should be hard. Why should it be easy? It's all about blood, sweat, and years. You fail your way to the top. And an expert is someone who's made all the mistakes. So if anyone's calling themselves an expert financial advisor, expert financial planner, they would have had to have made all the mistakes. There is no shortcuts. Anyway, onwards to my first mistake. My first mistake is not having tough conversations earlier on. The one that springs to mind is when I set up Maven Advisor in 2017. I moved a chunk of clients across. I sort of cleansed the client bank, let's call it. And there was a couple of clients I was on the fence about. So I was sort of calling them up and having an open conversation about them. Anyway, one client was I was a bit on the fence with them. They were a couple. And I said, okay, no, it's fine. We'll have our normal annual planning meeting. And it seems like you want to go ahead with me and come to the new company. I said, well, I'll email you the new client agreement of the new company and just bring it along with you and, sign it and give it to me because it's just, a formality. They said, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that then. So they came to my office and I thought, do I want to have this conversation about signing the client agreement now or just have the normal client meeting? I sort of chickened out a bit. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll have the normal client meeting as normal. It was full on, an hour and a half, discussing everything about their family, what's going on, everything about the business. The kids are away, just finished uni, full Voyant plan update, everything like bang on. We've got this track, we've got this financial track sorted. Right at the end, I said, oh, by the way, before you go, we've got to, get that client agreement signed. In this case, the wife said, yeah, no worries, let's sort that out, I'll grab a pen. And then the husband went, no, wait there, we need to think about this. And I was thinking, oof, what do you mean? And he said, oh, no, I need to sort of think about this and speak to my hearing and do this. And I was thinking, that's a bit odd. We just had like a fantastic hour and a half meeting. Everything went on perfectly well. And now at the final 11th hour, he's like, oh, hold up, I don't want to become a client of yours. And I was like, okay, right. So anyway, that ended. For me, I'm giving no second chances. So, I sent a polite email the next day basically saying, I wish you all the best. But yeah, you're not going to be coming to my new firm. Anyway, on hindsight, when I sort of journaled it in my head or sort of wrote some notes, I should have had the tough conversation early up. Again, it's the theme of this show, trust your gut. The moment you think, actually, should I talk about that? And you go, oh, no, I'll probably push that down the line. If you meet a mate for a beer and you've got something important to talk about, don't talk about, the fun stuff for half an hour and they go, oh, finally, Alan, just the really tough thing that we need to speak about. Can we talk about it now? Just ruins the whole day or not, it sets it up. So yeah, trust your gut. If you're going to have those tough conversations, have the tough conversations sooner rather than later, is from my experience. And that feeling when you think, is this going to go wrong? Do I call it out? So yeah, anyway, that's my first point. Moving on to my second point, it's a bit more, I suppose, practical. It's avoid the shiny new stuff. There's so much shiny new stuff in this business and profession, usually around AI, usually around financial products. There's so much financial trash that's being created, invented to sell to financial and investing illiterates to make themselves wealthy. You as professional advisors, one of the key things of you working with your clients is things like financial trash avoidance, scam avoidance, and it's a huge benefit of working with a serious professional. So this is all around shrink your circle of competence. I believe there's very few financial assets you should get involved in. It's global equities for the growth engine for the long-term money. It's property if you're into having a high hassle factor asset class, and then it's cash for all known expenses. Everything else is financial trash and noise. My final point, this is on marketing. It's a Seth Godin term, so some people will like it, some people won't. Ship more, deliver more, be vulnerable, do a bit more of your work in public. I think I started my podcast too late. I think I started in 2017. I've not yet started my YouTube channel. So this is me sort of making a sort of public stamp. I need to start a YouTube channel because I'll start one and do it for a few years and then regret that I didn't do it soon. And this is a bit of an odd one. Me and Pierre, the sort of founder on Hum Premium, we've got this bad ideas idea that we're constantly trying to throw bad ideas to each other. From bad ideas, usually good ideas come. But I'm just sort of saying, find someone who can be your sort of bad ideas accountability partner. Because we always want to wait for the good ideas. But if you just start, just sharing bad ideas with someone you're close to and trust, and can be honest, terrible ideas are quite good to share. As I say, usually good ideas come from terrible ideas. And that's my 3 points, a bit of a meander through. My fourth point was my mistake was meeting Alan Smith for a coffee in the Sherlock Holmes Hotel in June 2013.
So many people have made that mistake.
So it's our 10-year anniversary.
Your life, my friend. Your life has never been the same.
It's our 10-year anniversary, Alan. And just for the record, I bought the coffee as a poor, struggling, polyester-wearing suit mortgage advisor, and this wealthy, good-looking back then. This wealthy, good-looking back then,
best investment you ever made. A cheap
multi-millionaire financial advisor. But anyway, I bought the coffee. Back to you, Chairman.
That's excellent. Well, I really enjoyed listening to that, and I know it was cathartic for at least one of the Trap Pack. And you just make the you're going to make the mistakes, right? None of it. Crikey, we're not superhuman. You're going to make the mistakes. The thing is, learn from them. And the recurring theme of this episode 26, to me, and it's a big thing for me because I do go on about the art over science, is the gut instinct. I don't know what it is in the human body, how we're wired. Yeah. We have this intuition. You've got to go with it. And if you sense Alan's story,
do not ignore it.
Do not ignore it. And if you sense a mucker, once a mucker, always a mucker. And you don't want more red flags than the Chinese Communist Party. Well done, Don. That's a very good line. Okay,
I think like a good sense just on that last point. And sorry, Nick, to dwell on it, but if there's an emotional toll being taken, you got to take a step back and go, why am I feeling like this? Because it just doesn't feel right. And okay, sometimes you just got to work through stuff, right? But like as you said, Alan, you had so many red flags, and I think emotional toll being taken on you is time to take a step back and give yourself that helicopter view, because sometimes you can be too much in the weeds. So look, I think that was great. Well done, everybody, and hopefully that helps everybody who's listening. Yeah.
Fantabulous. Now, amazing as it is, I mean, it's fantastic palazzo in Catania, but somehow, through ways I do not understand, The Royal Mail has found me, and here she comes, dragging her bulging sack up these fantastic marble steps. I'm not going to help her. Okay, she's paid to do a job, and I'm paid to do a job. I'm going to sit here and wait. Here comes the sack, and I'm going to just have a look and see what we've got. And who is the first?
This is the perfect music.
Don't forget, in the pinned tweet at Advisor Podcast, there is a link to a Google form where you can submit your questions, and we are getting round to them. We've still got quite a few in the bag to get through. So if you post a question and we haven't come to it yet, don't think we're ignoring you. We're just getting through them as and when we can. Now, the first question again is from Eamon Prendergast, who asks a long question about how to organise a seminar. And gents, if that's okay with you, I'm going to bounce this. This is a meat and potatoes for another episode. Maybe the next episode we will get round to it, Eamon. The pros and cons of doing a seminar, how you do it, who you target, how you follow up. That's a meat and potatoes. So with respect, we're going to ignore that one. But I haven't opened up any more Trappist questions. So this one is from Ian G. He's not got a social handle, so he's not on Twitter or LinkedIn. Part of me thinks, well done on you, and then part of me thinks you're a weirdo. In the most recent podcast, one of you says going much simpler. That was me. 1 plan, 3 buckets, 1 fund. What's the fund, please? And what's in each bucket? How do the buckets change, if at all? Okay, well, I'll give me a mea culpa. Inspired in part by The Voice, by Widger and his practice of using the dimensional world allocation funds. By the way, what I say now is not advice, okay? This show is aimed at financial professionals, despite the fact that we deliver it. It's aimed at financial professionals. I know that some Joe Publics and retail people watch this show on YouTube, especially just for the banter, apparently. God help you. So what I'm telling you here is not advice. I'm just telling you what I deliver for my clients, okay? Just got to get that out there. Right, so I use 1 fund, and it's the Dimensional World Equity Fund, okay? I've made this passage over the last 22 years of being an advisor. I went from active. I then joined the cult of dimensional, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I went down that route, and then I had a multi-fund portfolio made up of primarily dimensional funds. And now I've come to the realization if I can achieve massive exposure to the great companies of the world through 1 fund, and you can with this fund, it typically has around 13,000 of the great companies of the world in it, and its benchmark is the MSCI All World. So it's all the developed world and all the emerging markets. It is global capitalism in 1 fund, and I'm glad Carl, in his topical tidbit on the Morningstar report, linked into that. Having 1 fund actually can help clients not do those bad things, so they don't get tempted by the rebalancing and chasing the hot fund and coming out of the cool fund. You don't need to. 1 fund goes into all 3 buckets, Ian, as and when. Obviously, in the spending stage, or what some people who don't do our job call decumulation, they should be shot. It's the spending stage. Then you might have a bucket of cash for 2 or 3 years' worth of income, or global short-dated bonds or what have you. But otherwise, you go into that 1 fund, job done. John Wheatley. John Wheatley, you are also... actually, you are on Twitter. You're at Wheato1976. And John asks, is the reason that financial advisors stating they have never been busier a nod to covering themselves in advance of consumer duty? If you're asking, does consumer duty take up quite a bit of our time? Yes, it does. I'm not sure it's covering ourselves. Do one of the team want to have a stab at John Wheatley's question?
Don't really understand the question.
Don't really understand the question.
It's the reason that financial advisors, they've never been busier, a nod to covering themselves in advance of consumer... Well, this is obviously a question before consumer duty. Well, I don't know. Most financial planners, all financial planners I speak to are busy. And that statement, I've never been busier, seems to be quite common. There's an increasing demand for advice, good quality professional advice. I don't think it's anything to do with consumer duty. I think so. But
financial advisors are incapable of saying, no, I'm a little bit quiet at the moment and I'd love a lot more clients. Everyone I meet anyway is, oh yeah, we're so flat. You wouldn't believe.
But it can also be just looking after your existing clients, isn't it? You're just busy.
Yeah.
You're just busy. There's lots going on. The legislation's changing. Tax rates are changing. We're just busy managing our book. That's
not everyone is smashing it out of the park all the time, Alan. That's not the way the world works.
Most firms, again, statistically, most firms are not. If it wasn't for market growth, organic growth across most firms, there's some stats about that. I think Lancat produced some, or with FCA. Most firms are sort of lucky to be growing at 5% a year if you stripped out market growth in the past. Yeah. So anyone that tells you much differently is, well, interesting. So sure that was entirely unhelpful, Mr. John Wheatley. But
I think the statement is correct, though. Never been busier. I mean, you start off with 0 clients, then you have 1, then you have 2, then you have 3. You know,
yes, you're always going to be busier than yesterday.
You've always never been busier. It still means you've still got loads of free time.
Got 3 clients. Yeah, it's more than when I had 1. Yeah.
Everything's relative, isn't it? Okay. I mean, I did read. I'm trying to attribute it, but I can't. But I read yesterday somewhere that Simply Biz put out a guide to consumer duty that runs to 13,000 words, which is half a dissertation. And you're supposed to read this crud. Okay. So those are your questions answered for this show. We've answered them as best we can. If the questions are very clear, we'll try and give clear and direct answers. If the questions are less clear, our answers are going to be slightly more muddy. Let's move on then, without any further haste, because we're at 1 hour, 19 minutes, God help us, on to Culture Corner. Now, voice. Dolce Dolce. Oh, okay. Go again then.
Double hit.
Double hit. I didn't even press
double
anything.
Whammy.
Wow. Okay. Carl, Dr. Paddy Barrett podcast. I guess Dr. Paddy is Welsh, is he?
Dr. Paddy Barrett is a consultant cardiologist, so always love hearing from people who have the evidence and have the research. But Paddy Barrett is a little bit different because he doesn't only talk about your heart health and your overall health. He talks about your lifespan, so how long you're going to live and trying to extend your lifespan. He also talks about your health span, so no point in living very long life, but being unhealthy and not being able to do stuff. But then the third one that I love, he talks about your soul span. So this goes back to stuff about your
Nick,
your
get
social...
the kumbaya again, please.
It's really good stuff. It really is good stuff. So I've shared a link to a very short podcast, 20-25 minutes, about a consultant cardiologist saying that, do you know what? One of the best things for your health overall, mental and physical, is to, have experiences with the people that you love. And he comes out with some absolute beauties, right? So follow this guy. It's at Paddy_Barrett on Twitter. That was an ambulance passing by my window here. But I
thought it was here. Sorry, Carl. I had to take my headphones off the chair.
Here.
Yeah. Oh, Christ. Go on.
A phrase he used, right? I love this. Your kids are the only ones who will remember that you worked late. Follow Paddy Barrett.
That is actually very good. Thank you for that, Carl. Lovely.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hart, Modern Wisdom, Sam Harris and Govinda Bogle.
That's basically it. I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. I've listened to
moving on.
hundreds of his podcasts over the years. He's gone a bit quiet of recent times, which is great. You're into people, then you sort of have a bit of a gap. But it's a big hit for the Modern Wisdom podcast. I think it's 3 hours. It's sort of production, so I've done the YouTube link. He's also interviewed Govinda Bogle, who people know I'm a huge fan of Govinda Bogle. I'm a Substack subscriber of his. And they're sort of episodes after each other. So once you find the Sam Harris episode, go back to the Govinda Bogle one. I can't get enough of Govinda Bogle. I love the way he thinks. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, the reason Sam Harris went quiet was because he had a complete meltdown. He suffered from a severe dose of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and he said something along the lines of, if Hunter Biden, if they found the dead bodies of children in Hunter Biden's basement, it would still mean the Biden family is a better case for running the country than Donald Trump. I mean, it was completely off the deep end, and he lost a lot of credibility.
Yeah,
also,
I agree.
He also came off Twitter.
I'm no fan of American politics, but when he said that, I thought, man, he's lost the plot.
No,
he's also he's very kind of deep. But he was on the Diary of a CEO podcast, Stephen Bartlett one recently, and my God, it was just so depressing about his future outlook for
on AI,
the world, for AI, and it was like so like. It's just so negative. So, interesting.
I learned a lot from the way he talks, not maybe what he talks about. I'm still a big fan of him. Anyway, moving on to my second point. Octopus energy.
Sorry, go on, Andy, go on.
Octopus energy.
Octopus energy.
Take the energy out of it.
From your IKEA wardrobe.
Take the energy out of it.
Following on from the house renovation blurb that I've been embroiled in over the last few months. But yeah, Octopus Energy is the company I've gone with the new place. A shout out to Octopus, is obviously a company in our space that's got multiple companies that are involved in finance. Octopus Energy, I believe, is their biggest company now. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, the energy sector is, ripe for having normal people that have got an email address called hello@Octopus Energy, not no reply. Yeah, so it's a breath of fresh air. So yeah, just sign up to Octopus Energy. Their email's amazing, their marketing's amazing, their service is amazing, their prices are amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Octopus Energy. Back to you, boss.
If you invest, if you use Octopus Energy, do you get 30% of your premiums back after 2 years if you put it on your tax return?
It's very good.
Thank you.
Very good in-joke.
Okay, Mr. Smith, the Dave Zeller Streamline My Practice Culture Corner.
I'm going to mention him in a second. I'm just going to do a quick shout out. There's a podcast that's put out a few weeks ago. Our friend to us all, Abraham Okasonia, and his podcast Retirementals. I've actually listened to most of those when they come out, but he did one with the CEO of Transact, Jonathan Gunby.
Correct.
Yeah. I just thought it was brilliant. It's such an advertisement for that organization, Transact, and Jonathan comes across with great humility, and it's just a really good, and I think Abraham's got his sound, not that we've got much to shout about, but he's got his sound issues fixed, and it was just a really good, positive podcast, and worth listening to. The one I was going to mention, this guy just come in my radar out of nowhere, starts following me on Twitter, and then I've noticed he's got a newsletter. This is actually guy Dave Zoller, Zoller, and he's got a business called Streamline My Practice. So he's a practicing CFP, Certified Financial Planner, out of Chicago, US. And I'm going to tell you, his content is fabulous. It's well worth subscribing. Put a link to the show note in the show notes. As a practicing advisor, the things that he's doing, the things that he's sharing are first class. And it's more of this sort of stuff that we're doing, sharing your experiences with the world. And I think we all agree that we'd rather hear from people who are actually in the trenches, dealing with clients day to day, and sharing their experiences, their ideas, their suggestions. He's a good follow on Twitter, and he's a good person to subscribe to on this newsletter. Dave Zoller. Shout out to Dave.
Oh, brilliant. I'm going to give that a go. Thank you very much, Smithy. And I concur with Abraham's one with Jonathan Gunby. Very honest about how the service standards fell off a cliff at Transact, as they did with everybody during lockdown, and how they've really addressed it. It's very open, and I did enjoy that. Okay, I'm not goofing up here, guys, am I? I don't think we've got any more culture corners. We're at 86 minutes in. 86, and I've got the air conditioning's turned off. I'm sweating
Buckets.
like a stuck
Buckets.
pig here. Buckets, thank you. Buckets. So I think we'll call that a day. I think it was a really good show. Episode 26 was one of our really good ones. There's some cathartic stuff in there, some mistakes. We were open and honest and rare and raw even. So we'll call that a wrap. Thank you, dear Trappist. If you want to leave a review for us, please do on iTunes. 6 out of 5 stars. You know the score. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're at 370 people now on YouTube, which is a good number. So if you'd like to listen to us, you can watch us as well. I advise you to do that before you eat. Without any further ado, I think we're done, aren't we? Take care out there, folks, and arrivederci.
Good effort, Chairman. Good effort, Chairman.
Well done.
Good day.
Well done, Chairman. We love you.
Bless you all. Now get the hell out of my
Hopefully you get back by September time.
You ever get back?
Go on. Sod off. Sod off.
Bye-bye.
Poor Sicily.
Oh, I'm keeping that in there. That's really